Hey everybody, welcome to the Columbus Wired Quick Hit pregame preview. I'm Andy Evans, and here we are back at the Horseshoe. It's been a minute, right? 3 weeks, in fact, since the Buckeyes last played a game here, and that's because they had a bye last week, and then, of course, 2 weeks ago, they were out in Eugene. So the Iowa Hawkeyes were the last time that the Buckeyes have played. Fast forward 3 weeks, and now the fourth-ranked Buckeyes at 5-1 overall and 2-1 in the Big Ten are welcoming in the 5-2 Nebraska Cornhuskers, who currently sit at 2-2 in the Big Ten Conference. I'm Andy Evans, and this is going to be an interesting one, folks, right? We've got the Buckeyes and the Cornhuskers both coming off of a loss. Of course, like I said last week, the Buckeyes were on a bye. The Cornhuskers were not, and they suffered a very bad second loss of the season at the hands of the Indiana Hoosiers in Bloomington by a final score of 56-7. I know everybody out there is pretty familiar with Nebraska's last loss, but if you weren't, yeah, you did not mishear me. 56-7 was the final score for the Indiana Hoosiers over the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So what do we know about the Buckeyes and the Cornhuskers? The history between them. OSU leads 9-1 all time. And there we go. We got some Buckeye fans in the house. All right. The Buckeyes 9-1 overall against the Cornhuskers. Their only loss coming in 2011. And that was, of course, Nebraska's first year in the Big Ten. It was a close game. The Buckeyes ended up losing 34-27. And it was a game that they jumped out to a big lead early, 27-6 at one point. Then, as we remember, Braxton Miller, who was leading a great charge along with running back Carlos Hyde. Braxton Miller gets hurt. That was pretty much the end of that. Nebraska started mounting a comeback, and they would eventually win for their only victory in this series. So, what do we know, though, about these current Buckeyes and current Cornhuskers? Well, we know that Nebraska quarterback, true freshman, Dylan Raiola, having a homecoming of sorts, if you will, because as most of you in Buckeye Nation remember, yeah, he committed to play his football here in Columbus. And then he retracted that, and then he said he was going to go to Georgia, but then he went back on that, and he decided to go to Nebraska, the same place that his dad, offensive guard and NFL stalwart, he was in the NFL for a number of years, Dominic Raiola, went and played. So Dylan Raiola, the true freshman, he's been hit and miss. He hasn't actually, from a stat standpoint, been too bad this season. 66% of his passes complete, almost 1,600 yards and 9 touchdowns. However, he's also thrown 6 interceptions, including 3 last week against the Hoosiers in a game that he very much looked like a true freshman. Here's a couple of stats, though, between the two teams that I am going to be focused on for today's game. Of course, the defense has come under fire after allowing 32 points against the Ducks, not causing a sack, not causing a turnover, basically allowing Dylan Gabriel to kind of hang out in the pocket all day long. There was virtually no pressure put on him. And the times that there was pressure, Gabriel was able to either step up in the pocket, escape it somehow, and was completing passes over the middle for big gains. That is definitely going to be a question today. What kind of defense are we going to see from Ohio State? And moreover, are we going to see pressure put on the true freshman Dylan Raiola? Are we going to see Ohio State get a sack or two? Are we going to see the Buckeyes maybe even cause a couple of turnovers, especially the defensive front and the secondary? Those are the two big question marks. Yes, right, Denzel Burke had probably the worst performance of his entire career. He laid the brick after Wednesday's practice. It is a tradition where a defensive player, or a player on the team, period, not just defensive player, player on the team, after the Wednesday practice will go and lay a brick, kind of like they're adding to the foundation that is the Ohio State football team. Well, Denzel Burke supposedly had a great week of practice. He's the one that got to lay the brick on Wednesday. So he is definitely going to be someone that everybody in Buckeye Nation is going to have their eye on to see how much he has recovered from the game that he had against Oregon, where he allowed 2 touchdown passes and was, burned on a couple of other big passing plays. However, the defensive secondary, well, let's get into these stats real quick. This is what I'm going to key on. This is what I said I'd key on. Team passing efficiency defense, okay? And this goes into what kind of defense are we going to see out of the Buckeyes today. I'm primarily interested in them creating pressure, not doing this cage rush stuff. I want to see some different exotic looks. I want to see some blitzes. I want to see some stunning out of the defensive line. And I think if they do that, it will open up the door for the secondary to have a better game, because obviously you create pressure on the quarterback, you're going to probably get more sacks. And creating pressure is also going to potentially force the quarterback into making bad throws. So if they can get pressure on Raiola today and do it in a non-traditional, and I say non-traditional sense, because Jim Knowles has been very traditional in his defenses this year. He's been running some base defenses that we're all now saying, see, there you go. You run that kind of defense against a team like Oregon, they're going to make you pay. And they did. But can they run a little bit of a non-traditional, at least at times, run some exotic looks and make it happen? Make it happen. So we shall see. But team passing efficiency defense, this is the stat. See, okay, Ohio State's total defense is 6th in the country, allowing, I'm sorry, that's offense. My bad. Hold on. Total defense, they're 2nd in the country. My fault. 2nd in the country, 251 yards allowed per game. Their passing yards allowed, they rank 12th at 165. However, their passing efficiency defense, which takes into account completions, percentage, interceptions, touchdowns, those 3 main factors, along with percentages thrown in to the passing efficiency defense. And right now, Ohio State's defense, passing efficiency defense, nationally ranks 46th. 46th in the country. So you can look at their overall stats and say, hey, their total defense, they're 2nd. Against the run, they're 6th and only allowing 86 yards a game. Passing yards allowed, they're 12th in the country. But that passing efficiency defense, that's what stood out to me. That tells me that they are definitely not putting enough pressure on the quarterback, and they're not causing very many turnovers. 4 interceptions on the year. 4 interceptions total on the year. That ranks 90th. 90th in the country. And OSU right now is tied for 6th in the Big Ten with 17 sacks all season long. Nebraska is actually tied for 1st in the conference, along with Indiana, at 21 sacks. Now, sacks allowed, however, the Buckeyes, 10th in the country. They've only allowed 5 sacks all year long. Nebraska, however, is 67th in the nation. They've allowed almost 3 times as many sacks as the Buckeyes, with 14 on the season. So this is a very gettable Dylan Raiola. Nebraska has given up their fair share of sacks. The Buckeyes have not. So winning the war in the trenches and creating pressure, that is going to be my sticking point for the game. Going back to the secondary and their performance with Denzel Burke, things might be a little interesting today because, as pretty much all of you already know, safety Lathan Ransom is out for today's game. He suffered an injury, a non-disclosed injury, last week during practice in the bye week, and he is out for today. So that makes, actually, I believe, the 2nd game now that Lathan Ransom has not appeared in, not having played the last time they played here at home, which was against Iowa. So that means either sophomore Malik Hartford or freshman Jalen McClain will be asked to step up again in Lathan Ransom's absence. So I know there's going to be a measuring stick against Indiana now, right? I mean, here the Indiana of all teams, Ohio State is going to be compared against, because Indiana, like I said earlier, just crushed this Nebraska team 56-7. So I know a lot of people out there in Buckeye Nation are probably going to be expecting this Buckeye team to do the same. And I'll be honest with you, there's something in me that's saying, I really don't think so. What is it? I don't know. It's just a feeling that I get. Maybe it's that pessimistic Peter in me that still relives some of the, excuse me, the good old John Cooper glory days of having these great teams that should have beaten teams that were way better than them and not doing so much as much. You know what I mean? I'm starting to ramble now. My point being, I'm not necessarily feeling a huge blowout today. The Buckeyes are favored by around like 24, 25 points. I called on Wednesday after the practice, a Wednesday at the Woody with my man Drew Sample. You can check that out every Wednesday. I said 38-10. And I'll be honest with you, there's even something in me that's saying that feels a little bit verbose, to be honest with you. 38-10 final score. But I called it on Wednesday. I know that the Buckeyes are without Lathan Ransom and, of course, Josh Simmons. I didn't bring up that point. He is, of course, their starting left tackle out for the season. Zen Michalski is going to take over for him now for at least this game, maybe the remainder of the season. We'll see. Ryan Day said he had confidence in Zen Michalski. He played a majority of the Oregon game, and really, I couldn't tell a huge difference between Simmons and Michalski. But we'll find out today what kind of Zen Michalski we're going to have filling in for the now season-ending injured Josh Simmons. We'll see what Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford can do for Lathan Ransom today. Also out is tight end Will Kazmarek, the seventh-year transfer from OU, who was filling in very nicely in that second tight end spot. Now we're going to see, guys like Bennett Christian, who filled in for Kazmarek during the Oregon game. Now, Kazmarek's not injured for the year, but he is out for today. So Bennett Christian's going to fill in. We might even see a Pat Gerd at times. So Buckeyes kind of getting hit a little bit with the injury bug. But as the old saying goes, they don't rebuild, they reload here at Ohio State. So I think Ohio State can get it done 38-10. I'm a little reserved about it, but like I said, I called it on Wednesday, and I'm going to stick to it. So, hey, I appreciate everybody watching. Until the post-game recap, everybody enjoy the game and have a great Saturday.